is the reason why we're doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
These are conversations that we typically don't have, that we're not surrounded by, and we don't have the relationships.
Right.
So I think that you volunteering to come do the podcast with me at no cost. I mean, like you're getting more than your value.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. That's important too.
Yeah.
You're giving me so much value, and you're getting it back.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I think that a lot of people feel that they should be paid for everything.
No.
And they don't get that this is how you build generational wealth.
Yeah.
By experience sharing and having the right relationships.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, there's more value in the opportunity than a finite amount of dollars, right?
Welcome to another episode of First Generation Wealth Builders, man. We back at it. I'm dealing with Dre.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're getting it in.
There it is, man. Last episode, you determined, you kind of switched up a little bit.
I did. I switched up on you.
All right, you know what I mean? I was thinking we was going this way, now we
Yeah,
going this way.
yeah.
So what do I mean by that? We talked about you actually
Driving for dollars.
Yup, and now,
Switched it up.
and so just to recap, while we going with the list versus the driving for dollars.
Yeah, so time, right? Looking at my time and what I'm realistically able to do, I know we've got to get stuff off my calendar because I just got too much going on. But I got all those COVID events that rebooked, so I got to finish those out. And I'm just making sure I don't take anything new so that my Saturdays will be free, plus baseball and softball are finishing up. So by the time all that's done, I'll be in a better position to look at the hybrid that we talked about. Because originally it was one property was going to be pretty much ready to go. Another property was going to be where I get kind of my feet wet in the rehab space. So I'm trying to do realistically what I can without having to wait 6 months. And that's where buying the list seemed to make more sense.
Got you. As we're going through this, in one episode back, we talked about where you wanted to go,
Yeah.
why you wanted to go there, who did you need to go there, what did you need, and when did you want to start and when did you want to achieve. So it's important that somehow, somewhere between our conversations, as you're doing the little tasks, we decide when we're going to springboard that. I think when you determine that, it's going to empower you to cut the fat off the steak and things that you don't need to do.
Yeah.
So I think that I'm not forcing the issue here. I'm just saying for yourself, I think that'll go there. Yeah. Man, friend of friend, I had something I wanted to actually bring up.
Okay.
In the conversation once, you brought up that you were bringing your in-laws to live with you.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, you a good one.
Yeah.
Because I don't know I could do that. They're going to have to be in the garage or something. But I say all that to say, man, I asked about their properties because they currently have properties. And you was just like, your mindset when you articulated was like, hey, we're going to have them pay for their final expenses or their,
long-term care. Yep.
Long-term care, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So, they can, if they don't have mortgages, they can invest, mortgages and bills, they can invest it and save it. But if they're just saving it, to be honest with you, you're going backwards.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, you're fishing for everybody. I feel that you should teach people how to fish.
Yeah, no. So I think I follow what you're saying, right? And so just to make sure everybody out there knows, it's not just my in-laws. It's my in-laws and my mom, right? We're trying to move both sets of grandparents in, and have them in a position where they can age in place. So they would have to sell their properties. We would take care of all the day-to-day utility, mortgage, all that other stuff. But then the plan we had talked about was them investing what they would normally be putting into a mortgage towards their long-term care and any final expenses that we got to deal with. So just rounding out that conversation. So when you say I'm going backwards, what angle are you looking at it from? Are you looking at like my total cost of living just went up? Like break that down for me.
Your total cost of living goes up because everybody got to use water, electricity,
Right.
all the above.
Right.
The truth is, if money's available, it's going to be used for emergencies. In the sense of day to day.
Yeah.
If they're taking that's going to take away from their saving for long-term care.
as things come up.
Also, the value of the dollar is depreciating with all these stimulus packs.
Yeah.
Therefore, if it's being saved, but everything is appreciating in value,
Yeah. It would have to be saved at a rate higher than inflation. Or
it had to be invested at a rate higher than inflation. Yeah. And so I in all of this, I also hear that you're doing all of the work. You know, I don't hear that I don't hear their plan for their retirement. And I'm not trying to...
You're good. Because we didn't talk about that, so you don't know. So they've been saving for their retirement for God knows how long.
Okay.
But they also plan to have a rental property down in Arizona. Like that's, my father-in-law is an avid golfer, and my mother-in-law likes to golf. They want to have a property down there that when they want to go vacation in the wintertime, they're going to use it, but the rest of the year, they're planning on having that as a rental, like an Airbnb type of deal.
Understood. I didn't know those things.
Right.
All I hear is like, man, Drake's doing a whole lot.
Yeah.
You know, but if we're saving, though, I think those got to be put into some engines that return. Airbnb is a way to do that. You know what I mean? But I feel that the same way you're being an advocate planner. You're preparing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that others are preparing.
So let's talk about, like, because there's some other context I want to make sure we have, because we're talking about first-generation wealth builders, right? So I want to go back and talk about where did this whole idea even come from for me to say this is what I'm going to do, right?
Man,
because you and I talked about it, but I don't know that we talked about it, right? So I was looking at between me and my siblings and my wife and her siblings, what we've seen happen, like when my grandmother passed, for example. We go to the funeral home. Everybody's picking out all the stuff. Then you got to talk to the church. You got to talk to all these people. And then there's all this cost. And everybody wants it to be a certain way. But then when it comes to the money, it's like, well, where's the money going to come from for all that, right?
Agreed.
And we didn't fit the whole bill between me and my wife, but it was a very sobering conversation to be like, well, who got what? Okay, well, we got this, and we got this, and we got this, and we got this, and that ain't enough. Then we calling people and trying to raise funds and all that stuff. I don't ever want to be in that position again. And then I realized the cash I took out of what we had is money we saved. And I don't get that back unless I go hustle it up again. So that was kind of that moment of, it made me think about guys that I know that play football. When they're the ones that get the call, like, such and such got to go to college, such and such got to do da-da-da-da-da, so-and-so got locked up. Like, those chip away at your ability to build long-term wealth. So for me, the best advantage that we have is time. Because neither one of our parents are in a situation where they immediately need services. Because they don't immediately need services, the idea is, how do we decrease everybody's living expenses? It doesn't make sense for us to carry 3-4 different mortgages and 4 sets of utility bills just because we don't normally think about living together. So if we buy a property big enough that my wife and I's day-to-day living expenses don't exceed what our budget is, and then they can add on whatever they need to, or we can buy something big enough and renovate it, that's the strategy that we're going into it with. So the overall mortgage note will be higher, but our budget line item expenses don't exceed what our normal monthly outgo would be. And it brings their outgoing down by a lot because they're not paying, like I said, utilities and blah, 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 blah. It's not that they don't have to put anything into it. It's we're designing it so whether they're around or not, we can afford to keep the property. Because that would be the other tragedy, right? Is we do it and it works, but then when they pass on, now we can't afford the note, right? So that's kind of the genesis of the whole conversation, just so everybody has a thought. I'm not trying to say everybody needs to do that. I'm not saying it will work for everybody, but the reality is, if you're going to be a person in your family that's in a position to build wealth, you're going to have to deal with how do you address everybody else in your family's situations, because they're going to come to you. They're going to ask you. You got to figure out how you're going to deal with that, because that's going to impact your ability to build wealth over the long term. This is just my strategy for dealing with my parents and wanting them to be able to age in place.
Gotcha. Everybody get along.
Yeah, man. So that's the thing. You got to remember, well, see, we didn't go to the same schools. my in-laws, I've been around them since junior high school. They're both educators in the school system I went to. Their daughter and I met in high school because we went to two different junior highs. I've got 2 older brothers, so they've known my brother, which means they've known my mom. Like, I've grown up around these people. I've known them for as long as I've damn near known myself. So, like, we kick it. We chill. We have a great time. Like, when we got married, we were over their house every weekend.
Gotcha.
It's nothing.
Now,
They want their own entrance, though. Everybody want their own entrance.
I understand. Do they have properties right now that they own?
Yeah.
Or they have mortgages?
Yeah, they both have mortgages on their properties.
Gotcha. Do you know how much equity is in each property?
I know my mom's, she's got a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Geist. She owes less than 80 on it. She's had it since 90. Ooh. Yeah, so she's at the tail end of it. I think she owes less than, I think it's like right around 84.
Gotcha.
And those properties are going for north of 160, 180. So I think she's in a really good spot.
Probably about 200 at this time.
Yeah. So
okay, cool.
Because here's the other thing. There's some renovation work that we're gonna have to do. Not a lot. Like, she's painted and she's kept it up, but like, she recently put in windows. There's little stuff that's got to be done. So I'm counting that against it as well.
Got you. The reason I bring that up is because those are properties that you could possibly Airbnb as well. Mm-hmm. You could possibly rent.
I didn't think about that.
And so if you're renting them, now they're cash flowing
immediately.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And your rent's going to go up with inflation. So then
let's talk through it, right? Like, if we Airbnb it, they don't get the lump sum, right, that they would get if they sold it and cashed out.
So I'm not an Airbnb expert.
Right.
But the truth is that the plus on the Airbnb side is this, that you should be able to make more. Because if you're renting it for $200 a day,
yeah,
and your mortgage is $1,000, you just need to rent it for 3 weekends, and the rest of the days is just basically yours.
Yeah.
You also make the tenant pay for cleaning fees, so that's not coming out of your pocket.
Right.
If your mortgage is $1,000 for a property like that, like, you're good.
Yeah.
Now,
her mortgage is something stupid, it's like $600.
Boom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. That's a great opportunity.
Yeah. Okay.
So the only thing about Airbnb is this: you have to furnish the house prior.
Right.
And you want to have it somewhat modern to make it attractive on the market when people are looking. So those are just you have larger upfront costs. As in conscious to how it is now, it could probably be just renovated in the sense of lipstick, paint, you know what I mean, couple things here and there, new toilet.
Exactly what it is.
And you could easily rent it for $1,300, $1,400, pay the note and the management company. Now you're bringing back home $500 to $600. Somebody's paying the mortgage down the same way with an Airbnb and or rent, and then it just becomes a asset now.
Yeah.
If rents in that area are $2,000 and 10 years later, you could raise the rent.
Right.
But if you're saving money, you can't increase you just can't click your fingers and say, I want more money.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
So now you're moving with inflation right there.
Yeah. No, I like it.
And you could do that with the other folks if they had a property as well.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a property over $200,000, I think Airbnb is probably the way to go for that.
Why do you say that? Why is that? What makes that the benchmark?
Because, 1% rule.
Okay.
The rents are typically going to be 1% of the rent. That's what we like for them to be.
Yeah.
So if you're at 2,000, 200,000, the rent's going to be 2,000.
Right.
Somebody that's renting at that price, remember, they can kind of afford to get their own home. They're just going through something, so they're temporary. We want long-term renters, 3 years, 5 years, because remember, they make it their property. They fall in love. They kind of like just take care of it.
Yeah.
That makes it easy on us, less repairs, and somebody's paying our note down again. So if the property is above that price, it may be a luxury rental. That you could Airbnb for a weekend and charge $600-$700.
Right.
Large groups, events.
So people are expecting to pay more for those luxury style homes, and you might have more trouble renting them out even.
Boom.
Less people. Okay, I'm with you.
So there's a larger market for Airbnb that might be attractive.
That property.
Yeah, because I'm coming to town for a business meeting and I have 4 of my colleagues and we want a nice place.
Right.
Because in contrast, somebody that's going to rent for $3,000, it's not going to happen.
I got you.
It will, but in Indianapolis,
they're further and fewer between.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. I'm with you.
So I mean, I think that we got to be conscious of that right there.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm glad I brought that up because we didn't get to this.
No,
in the
you
past
got my
episodes.
wheel spinning. You definitely got my wheel spinning.
Yeah.
Like I got more questions for you, but I don't want to deter the conversation.
Nah, ask the questions. We're here.
So let's talk through the other property, right? It's in the 46 and 56 in Arlington area. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, fully renovated. Like they gutted it. They've done a great job with it. And again, the plan was sell it, get out of it, and I think they've got a lot more equity than my mother would in hers. When you said Airbnb and I thought Geist, I'm like, that's a perfect match. The 46 and 56 in Arlington area, though, depending on where you are, I'm curious.
So if you are, by the side where the apartments are,
right? Now
I wouldn't.
And they're not. They're across.
I would rent it.
Yeah.
But this is what I would do. They have equity.
Yeah.
You refinance it. Allow them to get their lump sum. They could invest into another one.
Yeah.
And put as a down payment, 20% down.
Yeah.
Now they got two. You could rent that. That's a great rental area.
Yeah, it is.
So you rent it and you rent another one.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's why I told you to ask it, because that's my purpose here.
Yeah.
To empower you to make the thing go.
Yeah.
I said you were fishing.
Yeah.
Now they're getting their own fish to support what you're doing for
vision.
them.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I like it. You heard it here on First Generation Well Builders, ladies and gentlemen. No, that's dope, man. I appreciate it. Like our community doesn't have enough of these conversations, right? Where you can not be intimidated or not thrown off or put off because you got questions about something, right? Like I got decent ideas, but you've been there before, you've been doing it. So I appreciate being able to just sit down across from you and be like, hey man, here's what I'm thinking, and get some of that steering, right? Again, I said this, I think 2 episodes ago. Every time we go through this, you end up saving me 3 months here, 6 months there, 2 years there, right? So that's priceless. Thank you. I
appreciate that. Yeah. I'm going to use that clip in a commercial or some shit. All right. So I think that that was a lot of context.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. I think that I want to pause and just really highlight that this is the reason why we're doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
These are conversations that we typically don't have, that we're not surrounded by, and we don't have the relationships.
Right.
So I think that you volunteering to come do the podcast with me at no cost.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like you're getting more than your value.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. That's important too.
Yeah.
You're giving me so much value, and you're getting it back.
Exactly.
And I think that a lot of people feel that they should be paid for everything.
No.
And they don't get that this is how you build generational wealth.
Yeah.
By experience sharing and having the right relationships.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, there's more value in the opportunity than a finite amount of dollars, right? If you come to me, what I'm really getting at is the difference between transactional relationships and strategic partnerships, right?
Explain that.
So somebody had to explain this to me when I was in sales. A transactional relationship is one that's built on, I give you something, you give me something, and there's nothing beyond that expected. When you talk about a strategic partnership, it's more about what's your goal? What are you trying to get to? What's my goal? What am I trying to get to? And then we start to share resources, technology, strategy, experience, and opportunity with each other to say, hey, here's what's going on. It might be a benefit to you. I'm not sure, but if it is, run with it. And I'm not expecting a paycheck back and vice versa, right? Because I think, what's his name? Gary Vaynerchuk talks about he wants to buy the Jets. And so right now he's in like this growing phase, if you will, where he's looking at how do I empower people around me, and how do I network with people that might be able to help me with that deal long term. So if he's building people up as he goes, those are strategic partners that he'll pull aside and say, hey, remember when I talked about being ready to buy the Jets? I'm really ready. Are you interested? If everybody around you is transactional, those aren't the people you bring to that table, right? Because now you're creating a long-term marriage with them when they've only been transactional with you. So it's really important that we know the difference between transactional relationships and strategic partnerships. at least so that you can identify who you're working with and how you're working. Because if you can't identify, you'll be trying to give something that you're not going to get back, and then you end up frustrated. Doesn't mean it's a bad relationship. It means you're trying to be strategic where they really only want to be transactional. That's okay. Be transactional. But then be aware somebody on the other side might be willing to be strategic and you're only transacting with them. So it's just being able to identify that changed the world for me when I started really looking at how are people moving with me and how do I want to move with them based on what I'm seeing.
Can you give me an example in your life
So
of a strategic partnership?
Yeah.
And then when you're done with that, a transaction.
A transaction.
And it's just because there's a lot of context.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that we could relate to that.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And get some more dialect on that.
Yeah. So I'm part owner in Brunch and Grooves, right? So my partner and I in Brunch and Grooves, especially like the first, I'd say, year and a half, I would mention all the time to him, they're being transactional. They're being transactional. And now, like, we're on the same page about it. But one example of a transactional relationship we were in, Brunch and Grooves moves locations, usually every three months. We got to this location, downtown Indy, beautiful spot. We were being strategic with the owner. We didn't know this at the time, but in hindsight, we do now. At the time, the owner was going through some stuff in terms of just the business and having other partners that had been, things were just really awkward. So I noticed a shift in the relationship. He brought in somebody that represented him as kind of a go-between between him and us. And that guy started talking about all these costs we should have been paying on behalf of the business. And I'm like, so wait a second. In my head, I'm being strategic because I brought business to your catering side, which we weren't even discussing, and we brought business regularly, selling out your spot when we come. So I'm being strategic. You're now talking to me about all these individual incremental costs, and the only thing that's changed is this guy showed up. So he put a barrier between the two of us in terms of the two business owners, and that barrier only focused on dollars. That made it transactional for me. So by the end of that, what happened was we had a conversation. This guy came up with all this cost. I told him I wanted to think about it, and I had immediately started looking for other locations in my head. I called those other locations. We got one set up, and the only part I regret about it was I talked, the owner and I hadn't talked until like the day before our event. And that's when I told him we decided to go in another direction. Part of that was just piss poor planning on my part. The other part was I started operating transactionally at that point. So he had been, because he put that person in the relationship and that person was transactional, it became less important for me to keep an open line of communication with him. I had to preserve what we had going on and what was going to be best for us. And so by the time I got done securing all that stuff, that's when I followed up with him and said, blah, 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 here's what's going on, correct? Because it became transactional. A strategic partnership. So on the strategic side, I am trying to build a real estate portfolio and I've got limited experience. You having a vast amount of experience found, I guess I would start with, we found common ground in me watching some of your past episodes and just giving you some feedback, right? It was all about how can I add value. Now, my goal at that time wasn't necessarily to say, I'm going to be on your podcast and we're going to be doing first generation wealth builders, but it was, I know I can learn a lot from this guy. And I tend to lead with value. I try to add value into the relationships that I think are worthwhile. So that was me just offering to give you feedback. And I think you sent me stuff and I made sure I looked at it. Because I'm like, if you're going to take the time to send it to me, I'm going to take the time to review it. And I'm going to take the time to give you feedback. Again, all of this is happening without any money changing hands or not even really asking for anything, right? It's just, I value your opinion. Okay, if you value it, I'm going to give it to you. And I made sure I took the time to do that. I think over the course of about a month and a half to 3 months, our dialogue became way more consistent to where it went from maybe once a month to multiple times a week now. And we're starting to share a lot more information. So now we've established a real relationship. Again, nothing's transacted. It's just knowledge and information. I think where we really hit the point where I would call it strategic is when you talk to me about your goals for trying to have a podcast and what you're trying to do to transition between businesses. That requires vulnerability. Once somebody shows me vulnerability, I know we're being strategic. So now I can talk to you about, I come from poverty and I never want to go back. And this is what I'm trying to do. Well, now we establish, well, I can help you with that and you can help me with this. Let's just figure out how to make it make sense. Where it solidified for me was when we talked and you kind of really put together a plan of, hey, Andre, when we do this podcast, I think it needs to be monetized and I think I should offer you this percentage and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, we don't even know what we're doing yet. Mm-hmm. Let's just start it, give it our best effort and grow it. And then we'll figure out how to make it, a contractual, legal, blah, 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 blah.
Hey, man,
on the other end.
Hey, by the way, we came a long way here. You know what I'm saying? We got this slimy green in here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But just think about it, right? Like we went out to L.A., to shoot an episode together, right? Like, all of the things that we've done just to get to this point where we're sitting in this chair having these conversations are worth way more than any dollar you could have paid me as a partner in what we're doing, right? And if that's not what it's really about, if it's really about the people, then let's get the work done for the people. The people will help it to grow, and then it'll make sense to talk about how do we make money on it. But again, those are the two differences, right?
I appreciate that. I appreciate that breakdown, man. Yeah. That I feel like that gives a lot of context for us to actually apply to our day-to-day lives.
Absolutely.
Because we have a lot of transactions going on. And I mean, it's I think that the world that we live in has been conditioned now by always having to take money away to where that somebody like myself is conditioned to be like, hey, what do you want for that?
Yeah.
And so even though I don't see myself as a transactional person, I'm conditioned sometimes to be transactional. Like you said, it's not always this person. It's sometimes you doing it the other way. And sometimes you got to pay attention to make sure it's strategic. There's nothing wrong with either or.
Right.
It's all about the timing and the type of, the end goal.
Yes.
I think that's what determines what is best for that time, you know. So I'm not trying to put a negative connotation on transaction,
right? Because it's not.
But it's just all about what's the end goal, and if that type of relationship benefits the end goal.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest lesson for anybody out there is be aware that this is a real thing. Like we're not just making up these terms, right? Like people will size you up in conversations and determine, is this somebody that I think can add value to me? The more value you can add to a person, the more likely you are to have a strategic relationship with them. The less value you can add, the more likely it is to be transactional. So if you're not even aware of this concept and it's happening around you, you're already at a deficit, right?
Y'all good over there?
Yeah.
The cameras are overheating, so they're kind of going off and on.
Crucial. Did you get everything though for the most part?
Yeah, no, we're fine. It's just we'll have to cut to something different whenever one of them dies.
Cool. All right, just making sure we good.
Saw a lot of movement, but just people need to be aware that those are real things, and they will help you maneuver in and out of relationships as you go.
Understood, man. That's powerful. That's man. Forget what I was talking about, man. That is it for today on First Generation Wealth Builders podcast, man. I want to say that I appreciate each and every one of you for watching and chiming in every week. Make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend that we're on. Subscribe, share it, comment, let us know. Give us some feedback about what you enjoyed and what you didn't enjoy. That's how we get better, and that's how we bring you a better product, man. Until then, I'll see you next time.
Peace.